All right. I think that I have this set up correctly. Now, I changed some of my settings, so you might notice that you see a different side than you usually do. That's because I'm trying to get it to work a little bit better with the light that I have before I start trying to buy different lighting or change things up. And so I'm just going to close this a little bit so that way it's not quite so bright on this side, and working with the light from the windows. So maybe you can see me a little bit easier than you usually can. So, hi Corinne, I'm glad that you're missing this lesson, not because you're sick, but because there's another commitment that is getting in the way of you being able to come today. That's great. I'm glad that you're feeling well. I'm uploading this one live to YouTube, I hope. So if I've made some kind of a goof, I've only done this once before. If I've made some kind of a goof and I have to redo this, I'll be very sad. So hopefully all is good and I won't end up having to say this all over again later. All right? I have decided to go ahead and help you start your new piece that we talked about last week. I know that you weren't 100% sold on this new piece. If after you work on it this week and over spring break, because you won't have a lesson next week because of spring break, if you're working on it and you're like, this is not going to work for me, I do not want to work on this for 2 months, this is not mine, then we will work something out, okay? But hopefully this is going to be a good piece, and the more you work on it, the better you'll feel about it, okay? So you have about 2 months to work on this one before contest. Contest is May the 11th, and I'll be sending out information about that. It'll be at WT like last year, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get into the piece itself. You'll notice that I've switched to a new program. I'm doing the trial version of it, so it still has some kinks and I'm getting to know it. But I think it's a little bit better because you get the, I have to learn how to, because everything's backwards. You get the little picture-in-picture, which is handy, so you can see me play, and you can watch my shoulder, and I can talk to you. That is a benefit, and there's another benefit then that I can show you your music. Now, I've uploaded this twice, and both times it's sideways. Now, it was not sideways in the screen. It's just when it imports to this program, it turns sideways. So I'm sorry. And I will be sending you this music, but still it's better to be able to show you stuff even if it's not the way you want it to be. Okay, not the way I want it to be. Still working on how all of that works out. So let's go ahead and work on the piece. The piece is Ivan Sings, okay? Let me pull up a little bit of information about the composer, which is going to help us when we start this piece. This was composed by a guy named Khachaturian, okay? With this program, I can actually cast what I'm looking at on my iPad too, apparently. I just haven't figured all of that out. So I'll just show you in reverse. There he is, Khachaturian, okay? If you think that he sounds like he's got kind of a Russian name, that would be correct, okay? He was a Soviet Armenian composer, so you can look up where Armenia is. He died in Moscow, Russia, okay? So right around those countries in the Soviet Union, what used to be the Soviet Union, lots of turmoil, lots of changeover in all of that. He was born and raised in Tbilisi, Georgia. I'm not sure that Georgia still exists either, but you'll have to look it up, okay? He wrote the anthem of the Armenian SSR, all right? And so that is actually printed at the top of your music over here. And his most popular dance is this piece is the saber dance. The thing about this piece and pieces around it, I think is very interesting to teach because it's a little moment in history, and that's why we're starting with him. Khachaturian lived in a time and a place in the world where composers and artists had to have approval from the government in order to actually publish their works or perform their works. And it seems strange that a government would want control of notes, but actually marches and anthems are very powerful. You get people singing together and playing music together. They form ideas together, and it makes them much, much stronger. And so governments know this, and governments that are trying to control their people, one of the first things they will do is control their art forms. And so at the time that Khachaturian was composing, he had to be approved in order to have his pieces published. And so in a move to try to help with all of that, he did end up joining the Communist Party in 1943, along with Prokofiev and Shostakovich, other composers. They were trying to help themselves, basically, right? But it didn't help a lot, and the government put more and more and more pressure on them because their music was too popular and too anti-government. It was too different. The government wanted things to be very standardized, and they weren't supposed to be standardized. Their songs sounded too much like the people and not enough like what the government wanted the people to be. And so they had either too traditional ideas or too modern ideas, and sometimes they intermix, and you get that in pieces like this, like Ivan Sings. So Ivan would be a stereotypical generality for a people. Ivan is a very common name in Soviet countries at that time. And so Ivan is the people. It would be like in America if we said John Sings, because John is a very popular, common American name. So he's saying this is the voice of the people. You can see why the government would have had a problem with that when they were trying to control the people's ideas. All right. So this is The People Sing, right? It is in a set of pieces, including the other one that we looked at last week that you rejected, right? It's songs about the people, how they work, how they interact, how they sing. So let's get an idea of the kind of song that Ivan, the Soviet people, were singing probably right around the 1930s and 40s. This would have been composed right during that post-World War II-ish era, okay? So here we go, because you can see my hands also. I'm going to give you a little taste of the beginning of this, and think, he's writing the song of the people, right? And so keep that in mind when you read the top, and it says that he was awarded the Order of Lenin in 1939, heavy communism, right? Stalin Prize in 1940, and again in 1942 for his ballet. They liked those things, but then there were other problems that came along later, okay? So here we go. So I just stopped at measure 17. Now there's a word in here. I'm going to turn it sideways. I'm going to turn this song on its ear, Corinne. There's a word in here that you've heard before, that we've talked about before. Want to guess what that word may be? I don't want to use red today. It's kind of gloomy out. Let's not mark it in red. Let's see if we can zoom it in at all. Doesn't look like it wants to zoom yet. The word is, completely lost. The word is enormous. Okay, so let's change that. Are you laughing at me, Corinne? Let's try that. There's the word. And you'll have your music. What is it? It's cantabile again. Oh my goodness, you tend to pick songs that have this word in it. So cantabile, if you will remember, means to sing. Makes sense considering that the title is Ivan Sings, right? Cantabile from the Catholic tradition, cantor, which evolved from the Jewish tradition of cantor that we've talked about before. Okay? So, it should sound like it's singing. Not too much trouble there. Next thing you need to notice, your left hand needs to be very, very subtle. It's going to have that piano against your right hand that's mezzo forte. Why? Because it's a very, very defined left hand as accompaniment, right hand as the melody, the singing line. Okay? Now then, another thing, erase those. I'm going to go ahead and address right off the bat is the pedaling. You'll notice that it's marked very specifically where to pedal. And I'm going to tell you, and then it says simile. Remember, that means just keep doing the same thing. Do it similar until you get down to here where it gives you other suggestions. All right? Well, I think that their pedaling is terrible. So we're not going to follow their pedaling. So I'm going to go ahead and flip back over so you can see me. There I am. Okay, and I'm actually going to see if I can, I don't think I have time to make that one bigger. I can change it out, but it took a little while to upload some stuff, so I'm just going to focus on doing this, and you can watch me in the tiny screen. Where am I? The tiny screen. It's so hard to be backwards. Okay, the pedal. You can kind of see, I'm going to get that foot out of the way, you can kind of see in this shot, in the tiny screen, you can kind of see my leg, a little bit, not a whole lot of benefit there. I could probably switch that around, but I'm not going to right now either. I'm going to tell you when I'm going to pedal it, okay? You've got pedal there, pedal, pedal, that's fine, pedal, 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 pedal. I'd pedal again there. So basically half notes, pedal, 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 pedal. That one can keep holding, right? Wrong notes. If you don't pedal it very, very often like that, it starts to get really muddy, all right? And you don't want it to be very muddy. You want it to be very clean, like someone singing over a strum pattern, right? So we can look up some Armenian instruments that are going to have that strum pattern. They're all going to be instruments that are descended from the lute, like a little guitar sort of a thing, yeah? They're going to be really closely related to the balalaika that does that sort of repeated sound. This has a very obvious strummed pattern, okay? So you want to make sure that both of those components are nice and clean. We're almost out of time, but other things